I'd like to welcome everyone to our webinar today, Improving Working Capital Management with Commercial Cards. I'm glad you could join us. My name is Christine Hunsucker, and I'm a Senior Vice President and Divisional Manager with Wells Fargo. U.S. companies have billions in cash tied up as a result of inefficient accounts receivable, accounts payable, and inventory processes. In fact, a recent study by REL Consulting found that by optimizing working capital management, large companies could generate $620 million in additional cash from their payables annually. Electronic payments such as commercial cards, as we're discussing today, they're key to unlocking working capital. Cards cost less to process than checks. They increase visibility and control, and they help improve payment cycle times. Over the next hour, you'll hear about the different drivers of working capital management, as well as key objectives and benefits. You'll learn ways to optimize your payment portfolio and some key considerations for such an initiative. I'll explore some ways your suppliers can benefit from commercial card payments. Then we'll have a roundtable with Treasury and Accounts Payable practitioners. There's a lot to cover today, so let's get started. First, I'm pleased to introduce our guest speakers. Lori McCulley is a partner with Treasury Strategies, Incorporated, a consulting firm based on treasury management, working capital management, liquidity, and payments. Head of the firm's Treasury Technology Consulting practice, Lori has 30 years' experience with corporate treasury and bank capital markets. Prior to joining Treasury Strategies in 2007, Lori held senior treasury positions with 3 Fortune 500 corporations. Also with us today are Sarah Siegel from SandRidge Energy, Incorporated, and Carl Steffen from Cree, Incorporated. A bit later in the webinar, Sarah and Carl will share how their companies are using commercial cards to improve their cash conversion cycles and strengthen supplier relationships. But before I turn things over to Lori, let's start with a quick poll for our audience. Our poll question is, do you currently include commercial cards in your payment portfolio? Please select one of the following 5 options. Yes, I have a high supplier adoption rate. Yes, but I have a low supplier adoption rate. No, but I'd like to include commercial cards. No, I was not aware commercial cards are an option. Or no, I'm not interested in commercial cards at this time. Please take a few seconds to choose the appropriate response for your business. We'll compile and share the results shortly. Well, it looks like we have an outstanding response rate here on yes with a lower supplier adoption rate. Well, that really shows us that with this audience today, there's a terrific opportunity to talk about how we can increase our benefits with our suppliers through the working capital solutions. Now I'll turn things over to Lori, who will begin her presentation with an overview of working capital management. Lori?
Thank you, Christine. Today's focus will be on working capital management and the role that commercial cards play in that arena, along with why working capital management is so important today. Let's first talk about working capital management, the components, why companies manage it, and the benefits that can be realized from optimizing this process. So if we think about working capital as really achieving accessible operational liquidity, there are a few key drivers that range from the information side of the equation with respect to vendors, all the way to the technology that companies use that can help them with working capital. An organization may choose to manage working capital more rigorously because of their overall strategy. They might emphasize one or more of these key drivers, depending on opportunities or liquidity constraints that the company encounters. Organizations that are looking for opportunities to overcome payable challenges or take advantage of opportunities by using information about their vendors, how quickly they need to pay those vendors, and what kind of work it takes to manage payments and exceptions processes will find that they'll learn a lot in doing this process. By managing the payables, receivables, and inventory with a higher degree of focus on process improvement, organizations have realized additional cash availability, better costs and efficiencies, control over risks, and they've achieved better strategic insights for other parts of the business. So I encourage you to listen carefully to Carl and Sarah talk about the process improvements and changes that they made on their way to better managing working capital. We'll talk about each of these things on the next few slides. Working capital management, or attaining better cash availability, as one definition, can be achieved by analyzing information on vendor payment amounts, the terms, payment channels, or the instruments they're using, and other payment characteristics that really allow the business to determine the cheapest, most efficient way to manage relationships and payments. Gaining insight into payment methods, frequency, and processes means that an organization can make better decisions on what types of costs they'll incur from those transactions, how quickly they can pay down debt, or invest extra funds that come in, and ultimately give the business more information for strategic decisions. For example, the business can look at the cost of sending or receiving a payment by individual vendor or in the aggregate. If the business finds that certain vendors are consistently late making payments, or that it's difficult to determine from the payment instrument how payments relate to invoices or goods, then the business should have conversations with those vendors to change behavior, free up working capital, or they may ultimately decide to go with another vendor if the relationship doesn't work out. Vendor relationship management can be a critical part of improving working capital processes. Companies can also manage their risk more effectively through working capital management and, in particular, through the payment media. Forecasts become more accurate, credit risk becomes more manageable, and the AP department can better manage who, when, how, and why payments are released, all of which leads to benefits in terms of the management of risk. Finally, working capital management allows the organization to become more strategic in the management of cash. Customer relationships become more fruitful as payments and receipts are made when expected with additional data attached to them, and we all know how companies want to get more information with respect to the data received on payments. Financial analysis and forecasts are more accurate, which in turn informs the business on volumes and timing of the finished goods, and additional cash is therefore freed up to pay down debt or invest in excess from a short-term liquidity perspective or in terms of the longer-term capital expenditure situation. Next, we'll spend some time talking about a payment portfolio in the context of working capital management. And we like to think of a payments portfolio as a snapshot of all the types of payment media an organization may use to complete disbursements, along with the characteristics of each payment. For example, cost, timing, acceptance, etc. Optimizing a payment portfolio is important when looking for ways to make the payable side of the working capital equation more efficient and cost-effective. And while certainly no payment method is perfect, they all have varied attributes that make them effective in some situations and less effective in others. Even commercial card isn't going to be the answer in all situations, but it definitely rounds out the portfolio as a whole. To optimize a payment portfolio, it's important to assess the characteristics of the transaction and the vendor. Can't emphasize this enough. Review the payment and the vendor attributes. When these elements are considered, a firm can then define its target portfolio dynamically, not statically, and then identify gaps between the current payment portfolio and what the company's preferred target state is by how those payment methods might impact various working capital metrics such as days payable outstanding or the cash conversion cycle. Generally, when this is done, companies can find there are still too many checks and not enough electronic or card in their portfolio. So the question becomes, which payments are most critical and most feasible to convert, and how do I get my suppliers on board? Well, the payments that are most critical and feasible to convert are really those with the greatest conversion value. And you can look at that in the context of financial benefits plus integration benefits plus automation benefits, reduced fraud, and cash cycle. That looks like a pretty complex equation, but really it's based on industry benchmarks or a firm's specific cost, risk, and benefit dynamics. And then from a feasibility perspective, this really relates primarily to vendor considerations. Does my vendor, are they capable of receiving card payments? Are they willing to take card payments? Are they card negotiable, or are they not even open to card at all? Now, this in turn is probably based on dollar amount, relative buying power, and other things, but often what you'll find is that a vendor analysis that can be quickly and easily done will identify those vendors already known to be accepting card payments. With that, I'll now turn things back over to Christine Hunsaker.
Thank you, Lori. In addition to the specific working capital benefits that Lori reviewed earlier, such as DPO and DSO, let's consider some of the recent benefits that have evolved from trading partner relationships. You know, a recent Visa survey found that more than a third, or 34% of U.S. companies use commercial cards as their primary source of cash flow financing. The key to extending the benefit of this time value of cash really lies in taking a fresh look at the way we view our relationships with our suppliers. Consider this. Buyers have much more leverage than their suppliers regarding their method of payment than they realize. According to a Kaiser Associates study run this year in 2013, the following dichotomy of perceived leverage was discovered. When buyers were asked, how much negotiating power do you have with suppliers over the method of payment used? 63% responded that they felt they had a low degree of control. Conversely, when suppliers were asked, how likely would you be to accept a card from a buyer that mandated it as a method of payment? 82% responded that they were likely to accept the card. So why are suppliers more apt to accept business-to-business types of payments now than in the past? Consider these supplier benefits. Faster settlement is the best example of working capital improvements for the supplier. In most cases, suppliers receive settlement the next day. Simply put, it reduces days sales outstanding, or DSO, as Lori mentioned earlier, because collection processes are minimized and working capital benefits are maximized. The ability to accept cards requires a standard credit review process. In many cases, this eliminates the needs for suppliers to underwrite or investigate financial standings of their trade partners. Because these transactions are digitized, great efficiencies are gained with the data that accompanies each transaction. And this information creates efficiencies in general ledger reconciliation, which in turn produces time efficiencies. Commercial cards are prevalent within the buying community, regardless of size or industry. So all companies and suppliers can get their share of this growing industry. The biggest news in B2B acceptance really are the new channels that have evolved. Companies are buying goods and services using traditional physical plastic cards and ghost cards, also now being termed virtual cards. These traditional payment methods have paved the way for higher technology options like single-use card technology, where an account number is generated once and then never used again. The added safety and efficiency of this method has really made for some rapid adoption. Evolving most recently are systems that initiate payments from the buyer's side of the equation, streamlining a push payment strategy, which is particularly helpful in reconciling large batches of B2B transactions. B2B suppliers are realizing the benefit of digitized transactions in all these forms because it produces really a competitive advantage at the end of the day, and it offers them the ability to gain their share of the business buyers. Now it's time for our practitioner roundtable. I am thrilled to have two Wells Fargo customers participating today. Let me provide some additional background on each of them and their companies. Sarah Siegel is the Accounts Payable Team Lead and Wells One Commercial Card Program Administrator for SandRidge Energy. Based in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, SandRidge Energy is a leading operator in the Mississippian oil play of northern Oklahoma and western Kansas. The company is focused on drilling low-risk, conventional, high rate of return oil wells in shallow carbonate reservoirs. With 41,000 monthly invoices and a daily spend volume of more than $20 million, the accounts payable team at SandRidge Energy has a sizable task at hand. Processing payments efficiently and cost-effectively is a must. Fortunately, moving key suppliers from checks to electronic payments, including commercial card payments, has eliminated as much as 45 days in cycle time, reduced payment processing costs, employee workload, and improved customer service. Sarah will tell us more about her company's success during this roundtable. I'm also pleased to introduce Carl Steffen, the treasurer of Cree, based in Durham, North Carolina. Cree is a market-leading innovator of lighting products, LED components, semiconductor products for power and radio frequency applications. When Cree launched a payment optimization project with a virtual card as a key component, the company was at 80% electronic payments. Within 6 months of implementing the payment optimization program, Cree supplier payments were 90% electronic. Suppliers were motivated to move to the virtual card by the offer of faster payment. Suppliers accepting card payments now would be paid in 15 days, increasing their working capital and speeding their cash conversion cycle. Suppliers who opted out of card payments were offered another way to get paid faster, by providing Cree an early payment discount. We're so happy to have Sarah and Carl with us today. I'll turn things over to Lori, and she will lead the discussion. Lori?
Thanks, Christine. I'll be asking questions of each of the Wells Fargo customers to get their feedback on how they approach some key challenges in their payables process, the solutions they used, and the benefits they achieved. They'll also be giving insights into things other businesses should know as they look to manage working capital more aggressively. Our first question I'll direct to Carl Steffen of Cree to answer first. Why did you make the effort to use card to improve working capital management?
Yeah, so Lori, for us it was not so much that we felt that the AP process was not working, or that we had too much paper check payments in place, because we actually just successfully made the migration from check to electronic payments through the ACH initiative, but rather more the fact that our CEO challenged all operational and non-operational departments to look at current and future projects and pick the ones which could add value immediately to Cree. So, in other words, from my perspective, I was looking for an opportunity to reduce Cree's payment costs, but at the same time, provide a product to our strategic supplier base, which also benefits them. So that's really how we got started.
Sarah, how about your situation? What prompted your decision to make a concerted effort to use card as an opportunity to improve working capital management?
Well, thank you, Lori. Unlike Carl, we process over 40,000 invoices a month. So we need to always be working on streamlining our invoices for high volume, low dollar amount invoices that was easily available to capture on the card. Also, we needed more flexibility with a lot of our vendors struggling to get payment on time. And it allowed a lot more visibility for our priority invoices in our ERP system.
Thank you. So, Sarah, what risks or concerns did SandRidge Energy face when you included card in your payment portfolio?
So most of our concern came from our upper management buy-in. They were concerned about our traditional card-in-hand audit controls mostly. Our virtual or ghost cards, we really did not have any key risks or concerns. It mostly was in the card-in-hand application.
And Carl, what about you?
Yeah, on our side, I would say that, we faced the challenge that, we had just finished, this initiative I was talking about, trying to move as many suppliers as possible from paper to electronic payments, and being fairly successful with this campaign where we reached, a payment split of 80% electronically and 20% check. So that meant that we, needed to offer a program which enticed the majority of our suppliers to move from electronic payments like an ACH or wire to another form of electronic payment like the virtual card, with the more standard route being to get suppliers to move from check to electronic payments. So we were concerned that suppliers would not be interested in just exchanging, one electronic form into another, and potentially, taking issue with our approach.
And for both of you, did those concerns turn out to be unfounded?
Well, it really was just about collaboration, explaining to them what the benefits were of the card and how Wells Fargo helped us move through that process, with our management team. It was mostly showing them the upside.
So on our side, we really, being concerned was one thing, but then it really didn't pan out like that. We had only really a very, minimum amount of negative feedback from our suppliers, with the majority basically just moving on, accepting the new payment option and getting paid quicker. And, I thought that, we did a very, thorough supplier analysis, working with procurement on which suppliers to contact, and they were using really a staggered approach. So meaning that we went first with these suppliers where we believed who had a high likelihood to convert, to see how the feedback from these guys would be, and not getting a lot of negative feedback or responses, we then rolled it out to more suppliers to drive the acceptance of the card. So, we staggered our approach, not everyone at once, and spread it out over some time and taking, respective feedback into account.
Thank you. So, Carl, what benefits have resulted from moving payments to card for CRE?
Yeah, so, we look at it, if you look at our approach, we basically had three potential or possible outcomes. Number one was, our preferred choice to move as many suppliers as possible to the commercial card. If such suppliers would decline that option, then we would have, a discussion with them to see if we could move such a supplier to an early payment discount program, if there was still interest from their side to get paid quickly, and, for CRE having the benefit of obtaining an early payment discount. And then if this option also failed, so if the supplier declined the virtual card as well as the early payment discount opportunity, then we basically moved the supplier to new extended payment terms of 45 days, which then again was kind of a positive outcome for CRE as well, because we would extend our DPO. So taking these three outcomes into account, for us all three were beneficial. So we looked at that as really as a win-win-win for CRE.
And were any of those benefits unexpected?
Yeah, so unexpected, I probably would say, was the amount of suppliers we were able to sign on to the program in what relatively short period of time. Also, the unexpected, the amount of early payment discount opportunities we were able to capture by having the follow-up discussion if the virtual card did not work. And also, the ability to increase our electronic payment mix to an even higher percentage, to move from 80 to 90%. And within that split, we then thereby saw then an increase on the ACH side and a decrease on the wire side, which then just represented another cost benefit to us, with ACH as being the far cheaper payment form than wire. So I would think these three pieces were unexpected from a positive side.
Thank you. Sarah, what about SandRidge Energy on the benefits side?
Okay, well, I really don't even know where to start. There were quite a few. Most importantly, I believe, our vendor relationships. It really just began to flourish when the vendors would be able to see what kind of one-on-one relationship we would be able to have with them, and using the commercial cards or ghost cards with their account. It would, they would get paid a lot faster, so they were happier. We had one person dealing with them directly on the procurement card side, so any problems or questions that they had regarding their payments or invoicing, they could ask that specific person, because with the volume that we carry, it's difficult sometimes for someone to find a specific person to talk to about their problem. Also, it reduced the amount of downstream costs with moving a lot of our vendors from check to commercial card payment. We're decreasing a lot of our cost with our treasury and our check process. So typically we grabbed all of our vendors that were, our 60-day payable terms to, 15 days, allowing us to capture 45 days there for them and still maintain that float on our side. And I would probably say the most unexpected, was just the ease. I mean, it was so easy to do, with Wells and with our account manager. It was shocking that we haven't already done this.
Can I ask each of you to just give a high-level estimate of what the timeline was on this project in terms of just elapsed time that it took you to achieve this, from looking at your vendor base to actually getting the migration done?
So on the CRE side, we launched the program back in October of 2012, and we're about to launch a new one, but that one is now kind of lingering out. So take October through beginning of June. So we looked at a good 6 to 8 months of launching it at and really signing on a sizable amount of suppliers to the program.
Right. So ours was very quick. Within 3 months, we identified with Wells. They helped us in our vendor analysis obtain where our key component of those specific vendors that were 60-day terms, currently paid by check, and they were we called them our low-hanging fruit, and we captured all of them, and it accumulated to quite a good amount of invoicing. So we were able to save that out of our ERP system in an efficiency side, and gain that in our P-card system on, capturing that spend.
Okay. So, Sarah, did the move to card affect any existing contracts with, say, vendors, terms, or payment time period?
Not at all. So what we did is we just identified with a vendor analysis with Wells. They will provide you with a cross-reference list of vendors that accept Visa or don't accept Visa, and we cross-reference those with our vendor database, and we're able to find good, reliable information on how to, obtain that segregated priority list at a high detailed level to increase the spend on the card, which ultimately gave our vendors greater satisfaction with our relationship.
Did you find that you did offer better terms versus your standard when you used the card?
Yes, so we were able to offer them 15-day terms and still maintain that float on our end.
Okay. And did they get any higher priority in your workflow?
Right. So in our ERP system, a part of them going to a benefit of having them on the card was the ability for them to be marked as a priority vendor, which gave them visibility in our system. So if our processors, we process over 40,000 invoices a month. And if they are a P-card vendor, their invoices pop to the top of our processing queue and are able to get processed, coded, and approved before other invoices.
Great. Okay. Carl, what about you? Did the move to card for you affect any existing contracts?
Yeah, I mean, so we changed our general terms, from 30 days to 45 days, and offered 15 days, for suppliers accepting, the virtual card option. So that was our biggest incentive to give out. And then we also now have changed our, supplier sign-on form, which basically, has which vendors have to complete who want to become a new supplier for Cree, and thereby we are, showing that the preferred payment option on these forms is 15 days credit card, with the general terms being, 45 days to drive really volume to the virtual card. And this, now, the virtual card now really represents the preferred payment option within Cree and being offered to any new suppliers. And we really do see this card solution not as a one-time project, but as an ongoing program which will grow as Cree will continue to grow.
Sarah, did you find that you encountered any surprises when onboarding suppliers to this program?
No, I mean, mainly in our industry, it was basic two kind of categories. So there were our large suppliers and vendors that very easily grabbed the card. It was a part of their process, and it was just a matter of emailing, the information and getting all the forms signed, and it was the next day they would start the card, very easy. So that was one type of vendor or category of vendor that we could cross-reference. And then we had most like our mid-level to smaller mom-and-pop shop companies. And mostly with them, it was surprising to see how easy they were so willing to accept the card because of the flexibility, mainly flexibility with the middle, like the medium-sized companies. They really needed help on their terms. And the mom and pop companies, they wanted that connection, so the relationship came into play. As long as we could maintain a good relationship with those companies, they were willing to work with us and would be more willing to get on the card, even though they're a very small company. So that's mainly what we encountered.
And Carl, any surprises for you in onboarding suppliers?
Yeah, I mean, maybe a little bit different direction from what Sarah was just saying, because we targeted and we thought that the mid-level to smaller spend will be the ones which will sign on and where we'll probably get some traction. And we also had this list, a category of some really large spend suppliers where we weren't even sure if we're going to touch them because we thought they're not going to go into accepting a virtual credit card. But with the other pieces really going fairly fluently and quickly, we then also gave it a shot and really contacted that special large spend supplier list. And that's really where I think our program got catapulted a little bit into a level which nobody expected, because we surprisingly saw a large number of suppliers who are really having a significant yearly spend with us also opting to go into the virtual card program.
So Carl, how did you execute your supplier outreach program, and what did it consist of? We basically had, set up two campaigns, around the initial supplier analysis.
I think very similar to what Sarah was describing on running, our suppliers against, databases if they're already accepting card, also taking, annual spend, average spend and relationships into account. And then we basically set up two campaigns, a calling campaign where we targeted, the suppliers where we perceived to, where we thought they have a high likelihood of accepting the card, and then a mailing campaign where we, perceived or we thought there would be less likelihood for them, to enroll into the program. And once these two were set, these two campaigns, we then with Wells, designed a couple of programs letters, sent them out, and then we really used the arms and legs of Wells and their onboarding team to contact our supplier base, through these two campaigns.
And Sarah, how about you? What did your supplier outreach program look like?
So similarly to Carl, we identified, our vendors that were 60-day terms and get paid by check. We went ahead and sent mailers out to them or emailed them if we had contact information on file for them, like specific contacts. Then we would just send them an email, and a lot of them just responded by that. Then if we had them on 45-day terms and they were paid by ACH or check, we would call them and see what they wanted to. So basically, as their terms got closer to 15, it was more difficult to get them on. So we wanted to call them and develop that relationship with them. And we found that by doing that, they felt more connected in that situation, and we had a higher likelihood of them coming on board with a commercial card.
That makes sense. So, Sarah, what single piece of advice would you give, and it can be more than a single piece of advice, would you give to others about transitioning to card from other payment types?
So for us, it would be to take advantage of the vendor analysis that Wells Fargo offers. It was so key in onboarding our suppliers. We developed such momentum so quickly that upper management saw, so where we had problem with upper management buy-in, they took notice, because we were bumping up against that credit limit saying, oh my gosh, this is going so well, we need more, we need to be able to facilitate this in a better way, because so many vendors are signing on and the spend is so high. Higher than we expected. So, I think that's really what gave us the momentum to push us forward. And then to follow up with each of your vendors. Is everything going okay? What can we do better? Especially those key vendors that, really may be more of a struggle. It might be more of a struggle to get their invoices through our system, because of certain delays. Or they are just a needy vendor, that we have to stay in constant contact with.
And Carl, how about you?
So I think we did a couple of things right, but also a couple of things could have done better. So maybe let me pick one on each side. So I think what went well was, if you think about it, there was a lot of cross-departmental activity supporting the rollout of the virtual card program. And I really strongly believe that one of the major reasons why this has been a fairly successful program here at CRE is because we had buy-in from the C-suite from the beginning to move ahead with this program, and having such buy-in from the various departments as well. So the benefit for CRE as well as for our suppliers was made very visible to the various folks being part of the program, which helped bring them all together and drive towards the goal of setting the virtual card program up for CRE. And so if you think about it, we had the buy-in from the C-suite, which was key, but then the various departments where the real work gets done is even more important. So if you look at procurement, IT, accounting, treasury, AP, we had them all interact. Procurement played a key role in identifying which suppliers would be a good fit for the program and ensure that our supplier relationships are also taken into account. IT instrumental in providing reliable data data to drive the program analysis, but also ensuring that the credit card payment option works as Cree's backend system Oracle and the Wells platform, have to interact. Accounting, impacted by driving the respective payment entries between the bank, supplier, and Cree, and then AAP, I hope that somebody from the AP team is listening, but they played an integral part, in supporting the implementation of the virtual card program, interacting with suppliers on a daily basis, and helping the onboarding activities. And then finally, Treasury, probably served the function of working across all of these various departments. So that's, I think, what went well. What we probably could have been better, or prepare some folks for it, is that we should have made sure that AP is equipped to being able to deal with increased questions suppliers have regarding how to take a payment, when they can take one, what limits are, what limits impacts are. And we did see that some suppliers sometimes were not entirely sure what they'd signed up for, so we had to do some hand-holding, to get them familiar, with it. So really, be prepared for some additional workflow. And I probably should have talked to Sarah, who I think mentioned that she had one person who was exclusively, taking all such questions, and that probably would have been a good advice for us to do versus, just trying to, manage it within the day-to-day stuff of all our other AP specialists. So, we learned a little bit there, but, it's working well now.
Great. And then one final question. How do you feel, Carl, that the success of these campaigns contributed to the overall goals of the company?
I feel, we feel very good about the impact, because like I said, if you look at the how I described it, the win-win-win for Cree, driving volume to the virtual card program, generating early payment discount opportunities, extending payable days, that all helps, the overall profitability and the overall goals, of Cree. So you can, I think, make the point that, the challenge from our CEO, to operational but also non-operational departments is that also finance can really, significantly contribute, to the bottom line.
Great. And Sarah?
So for us, it was improving our efficiency as a department. We're able to be a little bit more flexible with our vendors and offer something that is mutually beneficial for us. And I think that aligns with what our company is trying to do. And we are thinking of improving, our cost efficiency, and not only that, but the vendor relationship side of it, growing our vendor relationships is extremely important in our industry. So we want to be an industry leader in, with our vendors. So as far as that goes, I believe that the commercial card has really lended itself to improving our company as a whole.
Well, I think both Carl and Sarah, speaking of Cree and SandRidge Energy's experiences respectively, have demonstrated what I talked about earlier, which is that it's a combination of a lot of factors, and the processes and improved efficiency, as Sarah just mentioned, as well as the strategic benefits and really answering the CEO's call are critical parts of their success, and something that a number of organizations and clients that we work with have managed to achieve in a program like this. So when we think about next steps for you who are thinking of these programs, we believe they are along key lines. The first is segment the vendors. Look at your vendors and the transactions to determine your target payment portfolio. What are the opportunities that present themselves based on spend levels and what have you, and the importance and feasibility of conversion with the specific vendors. Secondly, look holistically at the payment portfolio. What makes sense from a payment perspective for card, and recognize that not all payments fall into this category, and that's why it is in fact called a portfolio. Third, develop a strategy to optimize the value of card solutions. So how can it best be deployed across your vendor universe? And then really create a strategy of adoption for vendors and internal AP and procurement. And I think the stories that we've heard from our clients today are really ones where it is a cross-departmental initiative, but that really pays big benefits in terms of improved processes and strategic value to the company. Christine?
This is great information. Thank you, Lori. I'd also like to thank Sarah Siegel and Carl Steffen for sharing their insights with us today. Very helpful on a broad spectrum of subjects. For more information, feel free to contact me or to reach out to your Wells Fargo representative. You can also visit our Treasury Insights website, treasuryinsights.wellsfargotreasury.com.